I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Leeds Town Council meeting for Wednesday, August 22nd, 7:08 p.m. Let's start off with a pledge, if you will lead us in that, Joe.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Joe. Starting on your end, Angie, roll call.
Angela Moore.
Alan Roberts.
Joe Allen.
I have not heard from Frank or Nate. I'm not positive on their status for tonight. I'll be looking for any declaration of abstentions by any council members. What's listed on the agenda tonight. On our consent agenda, we have tonight's agenda and 3 town council meetings. Trying to play catch up on a couple of those.
Would it be prudent to wait for our additional council members before approving those minutes? In case any changes made?
I guess you could. If we have a quorum here, we can do business. But it's what we decide as a group. I'm comfortable. I've given my changes to Amy last week on those. Those corrections that I had were made. I'm not sure the status on anyone else. But if you feel like that will be better, Joe.
I'm comfortable with them.
I have that 15th.
I'll be looking for a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that. It's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Alan Roberts, to accept tonight's consent agenda, which includes tonight's agenda and the minutes from July 25th, August 8th, and August 15th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The announcements. We have the Wild West Days that normally have been held in October. The committee has set the September 21st and 22nd for the Wild West Days here in Leeds. I'll have to be honest that there's not a lot of momentum behind it. When we lost Hiram, who was a key player in organizing and structuring that, we lost a lot of momentum in that annual event. The town's very supportive and desirous that we continue that event. So the committee is in desperate need of some assistance in a number of ways. I know a lot of people can allot a small period of time for something. And sometimes we think, well, if I can't allot an entire day, then I'm not going to see if they need my help on anything. I can tell you that a lot of times an hour for something would be sufficient to help that committee to accomplish what they have a desire to do for the Wild West Day. So we're petitioning for support from the public, citizens to help pull that together. September 21st and 22nd.
Did we put a notice at the post office?
We do have some notices that Gene's put up or got printed out that will be posted in a number of places and give more information on that.
There's one at the post office announcing it, but I didn't read it to notice that it didn't jump out at me that was asking. I mean,
Were there any signatures on the comments from the public? Did you notice? I didn't notice all of them. Just so we're understanding in the future, Amy would like anyone to sign in. That when you sign it, doesn't mean that you're signing, yeah, that's the one. That's just a normal sign-in sheet. So she can record individuals that are here. There were no names on the citizen comments. We'll go right into our public hearing. How I'd like to work this is to maybe give a little background of this specific applicant and the public hearing. This public hearing is not a required public hearing by the state laws. The public hearing that was held at the Planning Commission level was sufficient for that. I think it's important that the public have as much opportunity as possible to understand what's going on with land applications, especially when we're dealing with subdivisions. I would also inform the public that it does cost to post a public hearing. So the town's willing to expend funds to have more public hearing and give people an opportunity to engage in that, but it's not free. We have, Bob, were you on the Planning Commission when that public hearing was held in February? Yes, no? Or
Well,
you're there?
I was helping the planning commission in February, but I just don't recall. I may have been here. I don't remember.
You may not have been there to comment or to observe that particular item.
I don't recall the public hearing on the plat.
Just a little background. Silver Point Estates is the applicant. Rick Sentz, the individual that's representing the applicant. And it deals with land up by the historic cemeteries. That annexation took place, the petition for annexation was in 2007. I believe it was recorded right at the end of 2007 for the annexation. There was also a development agreement that came in at roughly the same time. It was just a little bit after that. It was the first part of 2008 when the development agreement was signed. It went through the process and the permitting for all the way to a final plat. Silver Point Estates had pushed it all the way to a final plat. They had not recorded the final plat. They came back and talked to the town last year looking for an amendment to their project, and what their desire was to scale back what their first phase was and break that up. Actually break the first phase that was agreed upon into two separate phases. So that gives you a little background of where we're at. I think it helps a little bit for people to understand development agreements are not uncommon before preliminary or final plats are done. It helps developers have a better understanding and municipalities have a better understanding of tracts of lands that come in and what they can and cannot do with those. I know that's been a concern by some citizens as to development agreements before all of the engineering and everything's done. All of the engineering and those preliminary and final plats still come through the process, so there's still checks and balances that exist on making sure that all standards and specifications are followed that go along with the project. My intent is to give some background there before we open it up into a public meeting. Also for Joe, I know Joe was not part of the town council at the time that this came in. So the desire is to give a better understanding that might answer a question that you have, or maybe it might cause you to ask a question that wasn't answered or thought of. Before we open up the public hearing, let's have a little discussion on the council level. Do we have Rick's got his map up here on the wall showing that. Russ, will you pull the lens cap off from there? Hopefully that thing will work. That right there is the property that was annexed in. It's probably a little difficult to see because there's a number of lines, but this heavy bordered line is what Silver Point's estate annexed in. Hopefully I can find. I'm having technical difficulty here, which is nothing new for me. Gee, why won't that minimize?
No,
Let's get rid of it.
there it is.
Let's get rid of that. I stuck them on the desktop. This would be the first phase that Silver Point Estates is looking at. I don't think we had electronic format on that preliminary phase, but I remember. I think it was all in hard copy.
I just sent that to you.
These are two separate items, and we want to treat them as such. They have some bearing on each other. And there are some questions that come up, and we'll allow the applicant, after we have just a little discussion. Angie brought up a question. There's a piece of land right here, this triangular shaped piece, that belongs to the BLM. Right here is where the Catholic cemetery resides. We had Rick represent the town on the application for doing an RP&P for this BLM property.
Don't let the initials.
It's a request for a public purpose. It's quite a common application done by government entities, municipalities, for BLM properties to use for public purpose. And a portion of that comes right across the Catholic cemetery. One of the issues that exists, a road or infrastructure, utilities cannot go through a piece of BLM land unless there is some type of a public purpose that's acquired for that. That's the reason that, there's two reasons. The town was very supportive of getting an RP&P for that because of how it accesses the cemetery and comes across the cemetery, and two potential roads. Well, one's not potential, it exists right now. Bonanza Flat Road does exist and come across there. So So in order to clean that up, and looking at a clean easement through there in the future, we have signed that application. It's, I guess you'd call it still pending. It has not been fully approved. We have full intentions and no reason not to think that that will be granted to the town. BLM has verbally told us that it will not be a problem. So that's one of the things that Angie brought up and asked what the status on that piece was. Rick, do you have any more current understanding from BLM than?
They said it would take 2 to 3 months, and it's been a month since we put the application in. And then after it's granted, it would be a 99-year lease, and it can also be converted into a sale so that you would receive title to it.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing going in the process to begin with, is looking to try and purchase. Because if you go in to purchase BLM land property, if they decide that they're going to sell it, it will go on an open auction, go on the open market. So anyone could acquire it. It's much better to do a lease on it, very inexpensive. And usually they are a 99-year lease that are almost. It's just kind of odd that it sits out there all by itself. But there's a couple of others that exist along the White Reef. There's actually one that exists right up here alongside of Silver Reef Road too. A small one.
On the west side of the freeway.
Yes, on the west side of the freeway. It would be close in the area, there's mining claims on it too. It's close in the area where the LDWA's water tank is, right there, the concrete water tank. That's phase 1, correct? Correct, Kate? Phase 2. I know I don't have that in electronic format here, and that's okay.
I sent, oh, I was gonna say I sent it to
Yeah, I've got an email.
you. Yeah.
Well, if you emailed it, it's here.
I can send it to you.
While the mayor's finding that, Rick, can I ask you a couple of questions? On the, I guess, southernmost part of the development that's closest toward I-15, in that phase 1, how high up the hillside does phase 1 come? Is it all the way up to the top of that peak, or are these parcels down the hill a little bit lower?
Probably explain it by showing the map on the other side here.
I don't want to hear it.
Here's phase 1 up here. Here's the freeway right there. This is phase 2 right here.
Okay.
So this goes up like that to about that point right there. That's where the hill is.
Okay.
And the freeway runs right along here like that. And so that goes up the hill like that to that point there.
Okay.
And then here's phase number 1 right here.
Top of the cliff more or less
Is that
follows this
top
line.
of the line?
Yeah.
Rick, what did you say the green area again, right here?
That's open space, and that's open space.
Now, do you
This
own
is
that
a
now?
trailer.
Because I was understanding there was people living on that.
On the open space,
Mhm.
no, that's vacant land that I own.
Okay. Because in here it said to be required or something. To be owned or
Should be
controlled.
owned by the homeowners association,
I see.
and they will govern the use of it. It's covered in the CCNRs.
Could you give people an idea of where Silver Reef Road, because I think your property goes
Yes.
over Silver Reef Road, and you were going to have some commercial things originally on the other side.
Yeah, Silver Reef Road is right here. Here's the freeway. Here's Silver Reef Road.
So you won't be doing anything with what you had zoned commercially for the other side of Silver Reef
No,
Road?
that's not in this subdivision.
This area right here is where Angie's referring to.
Is that where the
Freeway here.
Yeah. Yeah, this phase, this first phase entails all of this, and this is where Silver Reef, it's kind of confusing. They're proposing this roundabout that lives where the tight 90-degree bend is. Welch's property is right here, either Welch, so Silver Reef Road currently comes up this direction here. The dynamics of this roadway will change. And the dynamics of Bonanza Road will make an adjustment too. You can see these dashed lines that are right here. That's where the current Bonanza.
No, that isn't correct. That's the easement that it shows, but actually the dirt road pretty much follows the road we're proposing right in front of the cemetery.
The main dirt road that we travel now?
Yeah, it goes right in front of the,
Yeah, the cemeteries.
yeah, there's a cemetery where we're proposing Bonanza Road, but that's pretty much the way the dirt road goes right now in front of the Protestant cemetery. The dotted line out there is the line that shows on the title report, but that isn't the actual dirt road. That's just something that they put in a long time ago to show an easement.
And there has been a little bit of discussion at the planning commission level on what may live along here. This property was acquired by the town through grants, and so it was important that we not impede or encroach upon that land where the Protestant cemetery is. But as we look at this development and the way that the applicants presented it to us, they are asking that easement be adjusted where they're showing the current location. And this was phase 2. It's up on the upper part of the steepest part of the hill. Probably before we open up the public hearing, because it may help answer some questions or cause questions to be asked, Russ, would you give us a staff report from the engineering perspective on each one, and it doesn't matter which one you start with, phase 1 or phase 2. We're going to look at them individually.
Well, you have phase 2 up. I guess we'll look at phase 2 first. I gave a staff report back in January or February on phase 2. The applicant has brought this phase 2 forward for preliminary plat approval, not final plat approval. And so the letter that I gave was dated January 26, 2012. I'm just gonna run through these points if that's okay. Point 1, we reviewed the boundary description and it was found to close satisfactorily. Point 2, there is a section in the town code that requires existing ditches, canals, natural drainage channels, and open waterways, poultry alignments to be shown in the plat. No such facilities are shown in the plat. Really not a major issue in my mind. It is a requirement of the town code, but not a major issue. We also have preliminary drawings that show a lot of that information. Section 21 point number 3 basically requires that the location and outline of existing structures be identified by type, and the structures be, to be removed be identified. No such structures are shown on the plat. So that, again, doesn't necessarily mean that, there are structures there that aren't shown, just none are on the preliminary plat. And again, a lot of these things are oftentimes not seen on a plat. They clutter a plat. A final plat that you see is generally a pretty clean document with not a lot of these things.
Where would we normally find those for us?
You would normally, it would be okay to have that on that one, the structures on a preliminary plat. Generally, you'll have like a preliminary set of drawings or a preliminary map that provides some of that information so that you can look at that.
You use your microphone.
Yeah, is that better? Sorry about that. Point 4 requires that the location and identity of all existing easements be shown on the plat. We are not aware of any easements that are not shown, but this can be verified through submittal and review of the full title report prior to acceptance of the final plat. Point 5, the preliminary process also includes submittal of a preliminary map, which is what I was just talking about. The preliminary construction plans previously submitted appear to include the information required and may serve as the submittal requirement for the preliminary map. Point 6, additional information that may be required as part of the preliminary plat process includes things such as soils report, drainage plans, preliminary title report, and other applicable information. So you can require that during the preliminary plat process if you want to. We actually have seen most of that. That's just a point. And then there were some potential geotechnical and flood hazards identified in those preliminary reports, which have been subsequently through the final plat for phase 1 have been resolved, those issues. So that's no longer there. Basically, my recommendation on phase 1 is that it is ready for preliminary plat approval, that some of these issues be evaluated further as part of the final plat process, but that essentially the requirements, in my opinion, have been met. Move forward, so. Again,
Phase 1 or phase 2?
that's phase 2 preliminary plat. Again, you know, the specifics of the code say these things should be shown on the plat, but we do have that information on the preliminary drawings, and I feel like personally that may be adequate. It's of course a decision to be made by the council. And the second one, this revision of do you want us to talk about that anymore? Should I go into the phase?
No, if that's sufficient for that second phase.
That is the report on the phase 2 preliminary plat. And then this is the application for plat amendment, phase 1, final plat amendment, and the current revision that we have. I had some other comments previously when this was submitted back in January, and I just wanted to make a point that there were some significant points on that have been addressed, specifically the geologic and flood hazards. Those issues have been addressed, and there were some other ones on there regarding the roundabout and other things that have been addressed. The boundary description sounds close, however, that will probably need to change, which we'll talk about here subsequently. Can you rate the, okay, so this is there. Point 3, the point that is made is that, you know, it would, up there around that corner, there are 2 landowners. You see the Hamilton land, and you see the Welch piece of property. You got that right here. So this is the Hamilton portion, and this is the Welch portion. Previously, they just had shown a half of road width in that area, and we had asked that they go and try to acquire the full right-of-way width coming around that curve. It looks like they have been able to, they've added Hamilton land to the plat for signature, so that one will be taken care of that way. And it looks like they've just followed the property lines for the Welch piece of property. To me, it sounds like they've tried to work that out and just haven't been able to acquire that full width. But you'll see there that it's just over 6 feet short in that one area. right there of the full, of the full right-of-way width. And you would be able to get the full pavement width in that section. I don't know what the town can, they've tried to do something there and have been unable to, from what I understand, so I don't really know what.
Let me plug in some information that we have on that.
Okay.
Recently, the town has had dialogue with the property owners there, with continued dialogue. I'm very supportive of the town cleaning that little bit up. I'm also cautious about causing an exaction on any one applicant for what exists here. The reason that the applicant was, and I'm going to use the word aggressive, it probably isn't a good word. Rick probably says, well, I wasn't aggressive, but Hamilton's property comes clear across Silver Reef Road, came down into this lot here a ways that the applicant had. So there was a lot of reason for the applicant to engage in dialogue with Hamilton on getting this cleaned up. To help the public understand, this right-of-way is only a prescriptive easement. The town does not own that. That is not a dedicated public right-of-way. The applicant has full intentions, as well as we would ask of any applicant, where their property goes to the edge, that they be willing to dedicate their portion of that right-of-way that they own and dedicate that to the town as a dedicated easement. Of course, roughly that would, in some areas, would be the center line of the road. Over here where Hamilton's got, that comes completely across the road, it wouldn't be any part of it. But I think that the town is going to continue to talk with Welch's, as who owns this property at this point. Make sure that we get that little piece defined and it's part of the dedicated right-of-way. I do not like to see unclean things that down in the future will be a problem at some point. So it's important that we establish that clear 66-foot right-of-way that exists there as a dedicated right-of-way.
Currently, that's just a note in here, just that is the case. So the next point is that talking about that BLM triangular piece of property, and just you've already kind of given the summary there, but our recommendation is that as a condition of approval, that either the BLM needs to sign off on the plat to dedicate that property to the town, or that the town needs to obtain the right to use this property through acquisition of the RMPP lease. And then it is not recommended that the subdivider be given final approval for construction prior to the receipt of this lease or signature. And the reason for that last comment is just because if that, for some reason that didn't happen, wasn't able to go through, I mean, really that property is owned by the BLM, and they could come and put a fence up right here, and you don't have access to get through. And so it's just a safety thing to protect the town and to protect Rick's investment in moving forward. So really that issue right there, the BLM is, in my mind, one major thing that would need to be either a condition of approval that gets resolved, in order to move forward. Then point 5 is that the UDOT right-of-way is shown on this, and maybe you can zoom out, and I'd like to see this little bottom piece that kind of shows the whole. There you go. That BLM or the UDOT right-of-way actually extends up further along that road quite a ways. And to be fair to Rick and Cade, that there's the UDOT deeds for that property weren't really readily available, and so they didn't have that information until recently. But that will need to be drawn correctly, and then the boundary description will need to be revised in order to move forward with that. So that would be that would be the second major point and potential condition of approval if that gets corrected. And then again, there's like 6, the code states the existing sewers, water mains, culverts, and those kind of facilities be shown on the plat. Generally, those aren't really shown on the final plat. They're more things that are shown on construction drawings, things like that. 7 states that applicable agencies that provide service to the proposed subdivision, such as school districts, gas, electric, water, sewer, telephone, internet, those things be shown on the plat. The plat does not include a listing of those agencies. Point 8 it is understood that Bonanza Flat Road will be realigned and constructed over a portion of the existing cemetery parcel, not over where the headstones are, but just part of that parcel. It is recommended that the town coordinate with the town attorney regarding plans relating to the existing cemeteries to ensure that all applicable laws and rules are being followed, and I think that coordination's been done. Point 9, it is unknown whether grave sites exist in the area where Bonanza Flat is proposed to be constructed over a portion of the existing cemetery parcel. As a condition of approval, the town shall require the developer to assume all risk associated with the potential of uncovering unmapped graves or other items of cultural or historic significance. And that's just, again, to protect the town's interest in that. 10, it is assumed the full title report has been received and reviewed by the town. It is also assumed that no additional easements or right-of-ways other than those shown on the plat or mentioned above exist, and the full title report indicates only those easements or rights-of-way currently shown on the plat exist. This is not the case. It is recommended that the full title report be submitted and reviewed by the town's legal counsel. I don't know if he has reviewed that, but I know that the full title report has been obtained. And then 11, one of the points of the town code, it says the final plat shall show everything required on the preliminary plat. The following items are required which are not shown on the final plat: contour, interval, and source, present land use designations, proposed zoning, and existing ditches, canals, etc. None of those are shown on the plat. So again, those generally from final plats and recorded plats that I've seen aren't something that are typically on there. So I don't know if it's, in my opinion, that as long as it's on the construction drawings and you've seen that on the preliminary map, it should be okay. So basically our recommendation is that you review the comments. If you're comfortable with those comments, there are at least 2 that need to be addressed. That's the BLM parcel as a condition of approval and that UDOT right away. With those, once those things are taken care of, we would be comfortable with the signature as long as, you know, it acknowledge those other points. So that is our report where we're at. I think they've come a long way in overcoming several big obstacles that they've had to. I do want to make one more point that I forgot on this phase 2 preliminary, and that is that the right-of-ways are shown, the cross-sections are shown, the typical sections. They are proposed to be asphalt with a shoulder and a drainage swale, which is one of the types of roadways that do exist in the Leeds Town standards. But the Leeds code basically says that the decision of which of those roads that is going to be selected is selected by the town council. I don't know if that has been discussed or not.
You're talking about these cross
Yeah,
sections.
and the only reason I bring that up now, because it's not going to change the right of way, but the only reason I brought that up now is because they do show them on that plat, and if you're considering approval of that plat, just that needs to either be acknowledged by the town council or a decision made saying we want to look at the other ones or something.
So the development agreement
On which type of roads would be it.
I was wondering on those 2 cross sections, on the 66, it calls for 3 inches of asphalt, on 55, 2.5 inches, and I was wondering if that was typical.
Yeah, you know, I think as long as, it is typical, you'll see areas with 2.5. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head if the code allows for 2.5. If it doesn't, we would require the 3 inches that they have. But the cross sections in general are what I remember from the town.
The reason it kind of caught my eye was I was thinking that when PP and I redid roadways after the sewer project, the water project, that they were putting in 4 inch.
On asphalt, I don't know that we ever had required 4 inch at all.
So a lot of times when you're paving trenches and stuff, you just match what's there, and if there is areas with 4 inches, they generally require them to put back what's there. So that could be it. But I believe the 3 inch is, to my memory, the 3 inch asphalt depth is correct, and it could be on the smaller one at 2.5. I don't remember that. But apparently that has been discussed and has been in the development agreement, and that is an acceptable cross section as far as the pavement and shoulders without the curb and gutter. Where I saw that there, I just thought we better make that point real quick. Any other questions for me or?
That answers my questions that I would have for you, Russ. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rick, I would like to give an opportunity for you as the applicant. If you have any further information that you think is probably needs to be presented before we go into a public hearing, because I would just as soon have the most information we can put out there for the public, so individuals can have a better process of the direction they may want to go with the question.
Well, my name is Rick Sant, and I'm one of the owners of Silver Point Estates. And basically, we're asking you to, as you know, this project was already approved with 45 lots. And it became apparent to us that if we're going to develop this land, that 45 lots is just too much in these economic times to develop 45 lots all at one time. So we came back to the council, the planning commission and the council, and asked that we might be able to revise the approved plat into 2 plats. We would revise the approved plat from 45 lots to 22 lots, and then we would take the remaining 23 lots and submit it as a new preliminary plat. And so what we're asking today is that you approve the 22 phase 1, 22 lot phase 1 as it is, with 2 exceptions, with the condition that we would take care of the problem that we have with the BLM, or not BLM, but UDOT easement that we found. Incidentally, we found that this afternoon. I was called this afternoon and told that all of a sudden they found this UDOT deed that deeded up over that Silver Reef Road. And so naturally we can no longer deed that to the town because we don't own it. And so we need to revise the legal description, and we need to revise the map to show that that UDOT easement, or actually its ownership, that goes over Silver Reef Road. So we would have that as a condition, that we revise our legal description and our plat. And then the second condition would be that we follow through with the BLM RMPP, which is recreation and personal public purpose. And we feel that within the next 1 to 2 months, why that will be completed, that you approve the plat with those 2 conditions, and then also approve the preliminary plat, and then we would follow through with that to the, to the proper following through to get that recorded at a later date, to get the final plat approved and recorded at a later date. Of course, all of this we're doing to try to accommodate the economic condition in the real estate market right now. And we're not sure exactly when we would do phase two, but we would follow the ordinances that govern that. And if there's any questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
There may be some questions that may be asked by the public through that
Right.
public hearing. And
Yeah, either way.
and if that's the case, I would just assume address those questions as they come up. That way
Okay.
we don't have to keep track of them. My mind can remember for about 5 seconds, and that's it.
Okay, you want me to stay up here or go down there?
No,
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
And I apologize, just because this is my first exposure to
Sure.
Silver Point Estates. But mainly, my question is, what besides along phase two, being on top of the hill there, where you have several lots right on the edge.
mhm.
And again, I'm at fault because I don't know, does the town of Leeds have any kind of hillside ordinance
they do.
restricting height of buildings on top of the hill, or?
Well, the height of the buildings are governed by the zone that governs the property. The hillside ordinance will govern slopes and where any disturbances could be made.
Okay,
Yeah, I've addressed that in the design guidelines and the CCNRs.
okay.
They've all been reviewed by your legal counsel and have been approved. Just to let you know, we're very sensitive to that situation, in that we've stated that the higher elevation lots will be 1 story. We cannot have walkout basements. They're to be, if they come out, they're to be filled in the bottom with rocks or earth or something like that. And that they're limited to a certain height, so that you have a very low profile. And then the colors of the roofs and the sides of the homes are all to be earth tones, and the landscaping and all is to be done with native plants and trees, so that it basically blends in. As you can see, we have areas on each lot. The lots are 1 to 2 acres, and we have a certain area that we call a building path that you can build your house on, and then everything else is to be left natural, so that as you look up on that slope, why you would have the homes that would have the landscaping around them, and then all the rest of the lot would be left natural just the way it is. So we're trying to preserve that look so that it will, it won't detract from the neighborhood.
Thank you. That answered my question thoroughly.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just kind of wondering, I remember you addressing some of that some long time ago.
Right.
But I was wondering, in the long term, who will enforce that the house actually gets built on the pad that's...
Well, there's a design review board. In other words, we'll have a CCNRs and the design, and in the CCNRs, there's a design review board that is appointed by the board members of the homeowners association, and this design review board is made up of 3 individuals that are pretty much skilled in the development of land and the building of homes and things like that. And all of the plans will have to go through that design review board. In other words, before they can come to you and take out a building permit, they first have to go through the design review board and have their plans approved. And then the design review individuals will use the design criteria that's been set up by the CCNRs and the design guidelines. And so that will be done by the homeowners association and the design review personnel that will be looking at those plans.
So there'll be a homeowners association in place before a lot is even purchased?
That's right. When the plat is recorded, along with that will be the CCNRs
and the design guidelines. And in those two documents, it sets up the homeowners association board and the design individuals that will be looking over those plans. And then the design guidelines will designate exactly what the guidelines are. And like I say, those have all been submitted to legal counsel, and they have reviewed those and approved them.
The reason this is kind of in the front of my mind is that with the economic downturn and the Silver Reef Highlands area, much of it going back to the bank, that process has kind of fallen apart. And we've had 2 homes go in that aren't apparently on the designated plot for the house to be set.
If that's the case, Angie, then that's an oversight on the town, because as it goes through that permit process for the building permit, for that lot, there should be a designated pad if there was one initially set up. And in Rick's application here, he has those pads set up. Those pads would be reviewed through the permitting process that says, okay, it has to live within here, and when they look at setbacks, it would physically live within that pad, or they wouldn't be able to continue. So if that's the case, it's an oversight on the town's part for not
So I guess
seeing to that.
this isn't so much addressed to Rick, but to us as a council or to us as a town. How can we ensure that that doesn't happen again in the future? Particularly because, well, phase 2 anyway is very sensitive hillsides, but there are some hillsides even in phase 1.
Yeah.
It's a slope. So I'm just concerned about what can we do to, for the long term, make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again.
Just having the continuity with staff that understands this is the way the process works.
And it's kind of inherent with a small town to, because you don't have a building department or a planning department or an engineering department in-house, why that is a little bit of a problem. And until things pick up and you have the funds that you can have those departments, why I guess it would be up to the council and the planning commission. Planning commission issues the building permits now, and it would be, I think, up to the council to make sure the planning commission is aware of these things and that they're followed. And then, of course, the people that live in our subdivision will be a part of the homeowners association, and actually they're going to want to protect their rights and make sure that the people that build in their community to keep their property values up, that they're obeying the rules. And so it kind of has to be a joint effort in a small town, and it's probably up to the town council and the planning commission to see that that's followed. Because it'll be very evident when the map is recorded, it'll be very evident where the building pad is. And if they're proposing to do something different than that, why it should be turned down by the planning commission or whoever the individual is that's issuing the building permit.
So I guess I might put that call out to the town, those of you who are here, to kind of think that through, that our planning commission is a very important job to do. And of course we've got Bob too to kind of assist in that now. But it's up to all of us to make sure that these kind of things, if we want to protect our natural surroundings and the beautiful place that we live, that we all need to participate in that.
And because they'll have the guidelines of the design guidelines and the CCNRs to go by. They'll actually have those documents. They'll have a copy of the plat map that's been recorded, and so it'll be very evident as to what the rules are for that area. For the planning commission to see when they issue the building permit.
Bob?
Well, Mayor, I think Dennis Smirtlick actually issues the permits, right, for the building
Dennis
permit?
does on residential.
Yeah. And so I think, and Dennis is a pretty thorough individual, if he's not already checking those things, which he probably is, he could simply have a list of the approved subdivisions with little notations on any unique conditions that are applicable to that subdivision plat, such as building envelopes, in certain subdivisions, and then Dennis can check that, which likely may be doing that already.
Okay.
One question, and Bob did this more than I have, but typically towns, councils cannot enforce CCNR.
Municipalities do not enforce CCNR.
Right, and then maybe that's where some of this cosme is getting, I don't know for sure, but typically the building department will enforce zoning ordinances and stuff, but it's usually up to the home association to guarantee that their CCNRs and that stuff will have to be.
Yeah, when it comes to the placement of setbacks, that would be the jurisdiction of the plan examiner and whoever's taking care of your permitting process. The color of the building on the outside will not be taken care of by the municipality.
But you can be sure that the homeowners association is going to be enforcing it because that's what guarantees the value of their property.
Okay, I'd be looking for a motion to open up a public hearing. Let's do the phase one first. I'd like to keep them separate, and I would ask the public that if you have comments on the phase two, wait until we open up a public hearing for the phase two. So, looking for a phase one.
I move that we open up a public hearing on discussion of Silver Point Estates Phase 1.
Second, it's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Alan Roberts to open a public hearing on Silver Point Estates Phase 1
Final plan.
final plat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, if you have comments, will you come up to the microphone, state your name? If you have a question, if you have a question, I would like to address the question at the time and try to resolve it there. Phase 1 is
Actually, I do have another question. Now, appropriate time to ask that?
let's hold off. If there is no one from the public, then we'll close that, and we can have discussion as a council, or you can ask a question as a council. Okay, I'll be looking for a motion to close that public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Angela Rohr to close the public hearing for Phase 1, Silver Point Estates. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, which comment?
The questions between parcels 10 and 11,
Here's a pointer if it works, if you can make it work.
between 10 and 11, this piece of ground right here, is that where the big mine works
Yes.
are?
And we're going to kind of keep that as a historical thing, putting a fence around it. And you probably weren't here when we presented the cleanup. As you know, there was some mining activity around there, and we have to go in there. We've entered into an agreement or contract with State Environmental, and we've agreed to clean that up. We presented the cleanup plan to them. They approved it, and we're going to follow that cleanup plan as we do the first phase, where we'll go in there and clean that up and then fence it off, and it'll remain a, you might say, a landmark or historic situation. Probably have a plaque there explaining what it is and what took place there. Just part of the culture and the historic, you might say, beauty of the area, like the cemeteries.
That's an excellent question, though, Jill. That's something that we had not talked about here this evening. there is quite a remediation plan that has been initiated by the applicant to the Department of Environmental.
Yeah, in fact, that should be the third condition. Or let's see, no,
I believe that
it
was
shouldn't be a
in-
condition, it should be to, that's right, to having the lots approved.
Yeah, I believe that was in the development agreement,
Yeah.
dealing with that.
Right, that the lots cannot be released for residential use until we have the certificate from the state showing that the work has been done according to the plan.
When do you expect to get that?
After the work has been done. What we plan to do is that once this is approved and the plans are approved and we've completed the BLM, R&PP, why then we'll go ahead and grade the first phase, the roads, and put in the utilities. While we're doing that, we'll do the cleanup. There's about 5 to 6 acres that needs to be cleaned up. And we have a plan that's been approved by the state, and we'll go in and take care of that while we're doing the site improvements on the first phase. And then as soon as we complete that section, why then they'll come in and give us a certificate showing us that the work has been done to their satisfaction. And then we'll present that to you before those lots are released for a building permit.
Yeah, that was one of the higher concentrations, and the applicant chose to do what little bit of cleanup and then fence off rather than entire cleanup on that, which it would be an amenity to add to their development, so.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique historical landmark, and we thought we'd keep it there.
What about mine shafts and things in the area? A lot of mines in that hillside.
Yeah, they've all been closed by the State Department of Mines and whatever their official name is. In fact, they just contacted me the other day, and I guess somebody got in and opened one of them.
Oh, really?
And I've given them permission to go back and close it up. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have that as a hobby, and it's a rather dangerous hobby, but
I assume there's been geotechnical reports done on the property,
yes.
and there's no risk of somebody's house falling into a sinkhole or anything of that
No.
nature?
No, any mining that was done is, you know, hundreds of feet under the ground and everything.
Joe, this note right here was added to, this was one of the last changes that was added as far as geotechnical on the engineering, and it's specific for each lot.
Okay.
It just says if you're gonna buy a lot here, it might be well for you to get a soil report on it before you purchase the lot. And we would do that anyway. After we complete the subdivision and do the improvements, we'll have a soil report on each lot, so that when the people that are interested in the lot will have a soil report for them to review. And then, of course, they can go to the soil engineer and go over it with them if they wish.
Obviously, from the town's perspective, we're concerned about those public right-of-ways that will be dedicated, that we have geotechnical reports on those, and they go in according to our standards.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
it's not that we don't care about the lots, because we do, but as Rick mentioned, it's in his best interest. It's in his best interest to make sure that he has that report for the lot, because people are less likely to want to get involved if you can't show them, yeah, I've got a report right here that says it's good to build on.
That note also protects the town, you know, for, it puts it out there for anybody buying a home, that they know that they need to look at those requirements and that they need to have technical recommendations that basically tell them what they need to do to build it. If not, you know, as a plat that's approved by the town, there may be some risk there of homeowners coming back and saying, wait a minute, I bought this one.
Well, I asked the question.
So yeah, it's there to protect us.
That's a question, Rick. In address his letter, he notes that the Bonanza Flat Road will be realigned over partially where the cemetery is now, a portion of it. And that it's not known whether there any grave sites exist, but if there were, I guess that would be your responsibility to address that.
That's right. There won't be any heavy excavation there, but as we go in there and prepare that and all, if there's any indication that there is something there, why, then we would call in the proper authorities and investigate it. But nobody that I know of has any indication that anything was done outside of the fenced area. Terry?
Yes, I had a question for you too. I guess I wasn't aware that we closed the hearing already. I must have been sleeping. But anyway, the question is, we talked about the CCNRs and so forth, the enforcement of the CCNRs. And like Angie brought up, you have the planning commission, Alan says, isn't responsible for enforcing the CCNR, and that's fine. But on the first house that's built in there, it's only the planning commission. There's not going to be any homeowners association at that point. So who's going to enforce?
It's the developer. It's me.
Okay. So it's your responsibility.
Yeah, whoever the developer is, why, when you first start out, naturally, there is no homeowners association except the owners of the property. And so we would be responsible. And normally what I do is I find somebody in the community that is interested in that area. And I know there's a lot of people in the community that are. And I probably select 2 of them and put them on the design review committee along with myself, and we would be the ones that would view it at that time.
And let me clarify just a little bit, Terry. Yeah, the town would look at those issues through the permitting process as far as setbacks and things that are pertinent to our ordinances and our zoning code. But the town does not enforce whether it has to have a red door and green shutters and that type of stuff, yes.
Well, what about on the sanitary conditions? What about sewage and so forth there? What is the plan on that? Or is there going to be a septic systems? And I would think with respect to the septic systems, that would be dependent upon the soil conditions.
Yeah.
With
No,
relatively small lots.
It's not going to be a septic system. What we're doing, if you look over at this map over here, this whole thing goes downhill to that point right there, and there will be a sewer system set up there to take care of the sewage until the town comes in and puts their own sewer system in Silver Reef Road, and then we would disband that and connect up with the town sewer system. They have developed some wonderful things now where you can have your private sewer system to take care of sewage and expel it out into the ground and have it go back into the groundwater completely clean. And it's an approved system by the state of Utah, by the environmental department, and it'll be taken care of that way. As you know, we've been trying for about 7 years trying to get a sewer system in the town, and because of economic conditions, we weren't able to do that. And so what we've done is done the next best thing, and we've gone to an engineer that specializes in this type of thing, and they've designed a sewer system for us that will be approved by the city, or by the town, by the county, and by the state.
So they've already examined the soil conditions where they're going to have this treatment plant.
Well, it isn't going to be a leach system like your.
Oh.
It comes in and it's processed, and then the clean effluent will then go back into the ground. So it isn't a septic system like you're thinking. The raw sewage doesn't go right into the ground. It's treated first, and it's treated in a structure that's underground. So there's no smell, there's no noise. It's not a, it's not anything that's bad.
Does one exist somewhere in some community that we could go and visit?
I don't know, I'd have to ask my engineer.
I talked to him today, there are recently three new systems were put in. They're pretty low impact. I don't know off the top of my head exactly where one would be.
No pond will be involved.
There'll be no sewer lagoon. There may be what they call a rapid infiltration basin, which is more essentially the treated water would go into a pond as clean water, where it would just infiltrate back into the ground.
Wait a minute, you're saying there is going to be a pond at some point then?
Right now, there is planned to be a pond of clean treated water.
But then there wouldn't be any aeration going on in that
No,
pond? It
It
wouldn't need aeration?
correct. At that point, it's treated water.
it's clean water. In other words, there won't be any dirty water visible that needs to be aerated like they have over in Hurricane and the sewer ponds. It won't be a situation like that.
Yeah, it's not an open lagoon. I can tell you that Leeds does not allow open lagoons, in which the applicants, any developers that are developing here know that they have options of having on-site wastewater facilities. And there are numerous different types that can be used that are very effective technology nowadays that,
It sounds
totally.
great, but is there one we could go maybe take a sniff at?
I can tell you a real fancy one up in Fairview. It's a really nice membrane system. I'll go up there, lives in a small facility that does the entire town of Fairview. The effluent off from it is extremely clean.
So what is it, does it do like 20 or 40 homes like this development? Is it-
No, it does the entire town of Fairview, so it does hundreds.
Like 200 homes?
Yeah,
Our system would be designed for about 45 units, and then as we continue to grow, we've been approved for 105 lots on 150 acres. And so as we continue to develop into phase 3 and 4, why then we would just add on to it.
I don't like the sound of this at all. I mean, we can't see any real method in which this takes place. There's got to be something that's undesirable after everything's been cleaned up. And therefore, that's not going to smell too good. And it's not like a septic system that we use in our homes here. It can't be if it's everybody's coming together into one collected area to be treated. So I'd just like to know, within a short drive, a reasonable drive, where can we go see something like this? To see that it does in fact work. I was really disappointed on a nice pond arrangement in Arizona once, and it was supposed to be great. Considered buying there. All the time I was looking out at this pond aeration system and everything, why the real estate guy is saying, this is really nice, you can't smell anything. Well, the guy must have been dead. And, everybody there was, was hoping the wind would blow.
Jerry, we do not allow open lagoons, and that's what the type of system you're talking about. There's no way that the developer is going to be allowed that in Leeds, because we don't allow it.
Okay, well,
And now we couldn't sell any lots.
if it's not open, how far down below the surface is it?
Some of these systems reside inside of a building that would be half the size of a police station. It would reside in half this room. Very effective systems.
Yeah. Okay, well, does this then say that anything up the hill, up Silver Reef Road, on a, I've forgotten the names of them anymore, but the one that Well, what was the name of that one right up the road from me?
Silver Islands?
Yeah, so very fine.
Okay, Highlands, when they get going, they were, of course, at the time that we talked over things with that outfit. But I don't know how many years ago we're talking about, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even more than that, when they finally just gave up on it. But when the economy got so bad, they were going to tee into something that Sant had developed, and at that point force the town into a sewer system, the state would, a normal sewer system. Well, does that mean now that they won't ever have to even go that far? Does that mean that they will then do the same trick with sewage?
They could. Our ordinances in our town allow for developments to put on-site wastewater facilities.
So, looking at the existing town, down Main Street and all that, are they ever going to have a connection with Hurricane's sewage plant?
I couldn't answer that.
At Harrisburg?
I wish this town would answer that. I wish this town would actually make that determination of what they want to do with wastewater.
Well, we're taking the word of these, Sant and his bunch, that this thing's gonna work great, and if it doesn't, there's no other option. Because the town, and he said, there's not enough money to put in a regular old-fashioned type sewer system that would then go downtown and force a line going all the way, to Ash Creek treating station. And so I just don't see any continuity in the thoughts here, where there's a little guesswork going on. And,
Well, I don't believe there's guesswork because it's regulated by the State Department of Environmental Quality. That's what wastewater and water systems are monitored by. And so these systems have to meet those requirements. Now, it's up to a municipality the different types of systems they would allow. And I'm just telling you that Leeds does not allow open lagoon systems. So they have to come up with some other type of a systems other than that, and they are allowed to do that on developments. Now, we could sit here and talk half the night whether I think that's the right direction to go. No, I don't. I think that the town needs to make a definite decision and be very proactive of what they want to do for the future for wastewater, and not sit there and think, well, it's going to be up to the developers to decide that. It should be up to the town. The town should be the driving factor on that.
How far below the surface is this police station size container treatment center going to be? How far below this existing surface? And, I think we're flying blind on this unless I hear some better answers.
Well, I've been working for 7 years to try and get a sewer system in the town. I personally put $50,000 into a study so that we could get a sewer system in this town, and we did everything that we could think of. If you remember back in 2000, the town had a sewer system funded and approved, and because the new town council wouldn't ratify that, why it was turned down and the money was given back. And then we picked up in 2006 to try and get something going, and so we've been working for 6 and a half years trying to get a sewer system in here. And we believe that we have come up with the answer. In other words, the answer is the city is not going to be able to put in their own sewer system. We had one designed and ready to go, but we couldn't get it funded. And maybe they will eventually through bonds or through federal government or something like that, but until then, why, we as developers have to figure out another way, and we feel like we've answered that by coming up with these systems that have been developed by organizations. They've taken them to the state, and the state has approved them for use in the residential use. And that's all we can tell you right now. Yes.
Do you think it would be possible maybe at the next meeting to have some, like, diagrams or plans or, and maybe a little more information on it, and perhaps tell us towns that could be joined by that have these systems?
I don't know, that's up to you, Mayor. I can't say what's going to happen in your meetings.
Could we do that, have kind of some?
The next point that Silver Point Estates, that didn't even sound right. The next time that Silver Point Estates would come before the council, depending on the actions that are taken tonight and the results of those, would not be until they come in and actually pull an application to start doing the infrastructure on their project.
So this meeting then is the last meeting on this development, and
It's a last meeting that determines whether the final plat is approved or not. If the final plat's approved, their development's already been approved to allow on-site wastewater facilities. It's the burden upon them to show the town and the state, here's a system that's approved by the state, has to be approved by the state, and here's how it's going to be implemented.
Well, I'll try to make it quick. When the meeting started, Rick said that we ran out of money, basically. We didn't have enough money to do this sewer system, right? That we had been considering before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the one that I remember, and my God, my memory is really wonderful, but anyway, they say it was 2006.
Right.
Okay. You were going to be required, you voluntarily were going to be required, your outfit, that you were going to establish a sewer system that we or the people above us on the hillside there on Silver Reef Road would eventually, when they had enough homes developed, would be able to then, would be forced to then come down and tie in T&D. You would have, in the meantime...
Forced was never a word that I ever used.
Okay. You were going to, your outfit, when I say you, were going to create a pipeline that would take your new development's sewage down to Main Street and then head on down to eventually Ash Creek Treaty. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It would involve Valley View flowed over there.
Right.
They would gravitate down towards Main Street
Mm-hmm.
on two collected lines.
Mm-hmm.
Main Street itself would have had their own gravitational problem. Wasn't a problem, but Valley View did have it. And that, all that stuff was discussed, laid out, and then all of a sudden now, we're coming back to this situation where you're saying, okay, there wasn't enough money to do that.
And what you're talking about is that the landowners that have developable land in the town got together and formed a committee. And in that committee, why we discussed what are we going to do about sewer in Leeds. And we looked at all of the different studies that had been made. There were 3 different studies, and we designed what we felt was the best plan. And then once we got it all designed, like I say, I put in 50,000, other people put in 10, 15,000. We had $100,000 and we hired engineers and we went in and designed this system. And then about when it was designed in '07, '08 in there, why all of it, we needed to raise $1 million to install it. And I was really willing to put up half of it, and I couldn't find any other developers that was willing to put any money up or property owners. So it just stopped it. And so then I said to myself, okay, what am I going to do? I want to develop my property, so what can I do? So I hired an engineer, Aqua Engineering, and had them work on it. They came up with a solution. They presented this to the state and found out that the system that they have represented to me is accepted by the state, and that's what I want to do. And as far as I'm concerned, it's clean, there's no smell involved in it, and there's no ponds that are going to pollute your neighborhood. And it's
In other words, the state is satisfied that it works because apparently it does work somewhere already. I mean, they would have to. They couldn't just be guessing.
right, and if it works there, it'll probably work
Okay, and where
here.
was that town that it works at now?
Who's Fairview?
Fairview's a town in Sanpete County.
Fairview.
And that's one type. Whether that's the type that Rick is looking at, I don't know the answer to that. I'm telling you, there are numerous areas in Utah that have different types of systems. There are a number of different types of systems that have been accepted by the state that are very effective.
And this isn't something new. When you go back east, you'll find out back east why they've been doing this for 50, 60 years, that all of those small towns back there have their own sewage systems. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a long time. It's not just a brand new thing that's jumped out of the ground. The good thing about it now is that the technology has been improved to the point where it is extremely efficient. It can be done a lot less expensive than it used to be, and it takes care of the problems that you're talking about, smell and unsightliness.
It doesn't sound good to me, because why is Ascrete are they gonna change their method of treating sewage to this wonderful new system? Or are they gonna have the one?
No, that's unreasonable to think that. They're handling 3 cities.
So it does have a limit. It does have a limit on so many homes.
Well, no, eventually they will probably have their own treatment plant. Right now, they can handle it in the ponds, and they're handling 2 to 3 cities. As far as we're concerned, we're only going to handle 105 homes. And then anybody else that develops in the area will have to come up with their sewer system.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that it has to happen that way, but there's nothing you can do about it because the city is not capable of putting in a sewer system. So the land developers have to come up with the next best thing. And of course, we're governed by the county and we're governed by the state. And neither one of them want this system to be in a condition that you're imagining in your mind.
Well, I'm imagining it up the hill when they start developing as soon as the economy picks up. Well, they'll have to make their own sewer situation exactly the same as the one you're
Or
going to
they
have.
could tie into mine.
So we could conceivably, between the freeway and Silver Reef up there, have maybe a couple more of them.
Or they could tie into mine, because mine is at the bottom of the hill, and they could all tie into it. And they could add on to it as they go along. Yeah, when we finish this will be dedicated to the town. The town will be responsible for it, and and Ash Creek will probably take over the maintenance of it.
Oh, that's a different
This will not be
situation.
owned and run by the homeowners association. You can't do that. It has to be run by a governing entity.
are we prepared, Mayor, to manage a sewer system?
No, did you hear what
No,
Rick just said?
they'll
More
sub
than
it out.
likely, it would be managed by Ash Creek.
I heard that.
We'll build it
but
to Ash Creek
likely does not
standards.
mean they have already looked into it and approved it, because
No, they
that was
haven't.
the problem with Grapevine, as you remember. They did not want to accept.
Grapevine falls in a different category because they have,
did not
they
want
have
to
an
accept the
entity that can,
responsibility.
they have an entity that can manage their own system because they have a special service district.
And that wasn't the
Rick
reason.
does not.
The reason they would not do it is they did not build it. And they said, if we don't build it, then we're not going to maintain it. Because, don't roll your eyes.
Yeah,
because
well, I have to roll my eyes, Betty, because I wonder what meeting I was in when the board looked at me face to face and said that they were willing to manage it as long as they didn't have to take on any liability.
That's true. And then after the meeting, when I talked to the director, he said they had decided that if they didn't build it, they would have reliability.
Then
would have
they don't have
liability.
to. That's up to them.
That's what they said.
Dave, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does that water go back into the aquifer, or can you use it for secondary water, irrigation water? And will you do that?
It probably goes back into the aquifer.
I would speculate with the type of system that Rick's talking about, it does not allow for certain classes of reuse. It would be an injection back into the aquifer.
I believe it's a type 2, it's a type 2 reuse, so you could actually apply it underground, but you could not sprinkle it or apply it underground.
And
Since they brought that up, okay, I'll lay out where the town should be. The town should not be in favor of a bunch of satellite facilities like that. The town should decide what they want to do with a wastewater system, and I'm totally 100% supportive of secondary use, because we live in a desert, and why not manage the water appropriately? And that's what makes sense, is to put in a system that would allow that. But until then, these developers, if the town's not going to have a system, they do have the ability to put on-site wastewater facilities. Betty?
Should we have it understood, an ordinance or something, that the town will not maintain these sewer facilities?
No, I'm not in favor of that, but that's my opinion.
Well, I think we're in a problem then, because if they're saying either the town or Ash Creek, I think we should know whether the town will or will not. And number two, I think before you build or plan on this, you should have some approval by Ash Creek. I mean, I'm not trying to be against it, but I'm just saying it would be good to have a, approval from Ash Creek that they would maintain that system and that.
Perhaps the town wants to get in the wastewater business.
Well, that should be decided. We should know if we're going to be in that kind of business. Are we a town that's is our government in business or not?
Every
And are
town
we going to
is.
have to do it for every developer that comes into town?
That's why I say the town needs to decide what they want to do with wastewater.
And until we decide, we're talking about approval here. We should decide whether we're going to maintain it, maintain it, so that they know. I mean, if I were Mr. Sapp, I would want to know whether I could dedicate it to the town or not.
It's in the development agreement.
That you
Yep.
put it into the development agreement, the town will maintain it.
That's correct.
The town takes ownership of it.
And every town that I know
So
of
who's going to maintain
is in the
that?
utility business.
So who's going to maintain it? Then are we going to hire?
I couldn't
someone?
answer that question right now because it doesn't have to be answered right now. I have no idea.
But we're committed.
You either have to find someone to manage that, or the town has to manage it.
They could set up a department and hire somebody to do it. You're talking about somebody maybe spending an hour a month to supervise it and look at it. It's not a complicated situation.
And unless there's a leak or a crack or a problem. I mean, I'm sure
But
there's.
every city has their own sewer department.
I have no problem accepting what you're saying, but I think what's missing here is we're saying, okay, we're going to maintain something, we don't know what it's going to be. It would make more sense to me if we knew exactly what the system was, so that whoever's going to maintain it, said, yes, we can maintain that kind of system, we're happy to do it, and then it would tie all these things together. I mean, someone needs to know what it is that they're going to be asked to maintain.
And at this point in a final plat decision, to understand that you're required to put in a system that is accepted by the state is sufficient. Under the construction part of it, that's when you say, you have to decide what type of system, and as you come through the process for your construction permits, this is the system that you're going to put in, and yes, that's agreeable by the town.
That doesn't go far enough, it doesn't decide who's going to maintain it. I mean, the state.
No, that's up to the town, because once it's dedicated to town, or a roadway, or any other utility or infrastructure that's dedicated to the town has to decide at that point, are we taking care of this, or do we farm it out? We may farm out roads. The town may not take, that's a decision at the time that you acquire whatever.
I'm missing a turn in the road here, Mayor, because it seems to me that if we don't nail that down, then our choice is limited as a town at that point. We have to do it ourselves or hire somebody else to do it. We don't know whether we can or can't. I mean, we're boxed in.
I would tell you that it would be in the best interest of the town to be proactive on it and come up with some type of a sewer system. But the town doesn't want to do that. The citizens in this town as a whole refuse to step up to the plate and say, look, we're looking for the future here. There isn't anybody here that wants to connect to a sewer when they know that their septic system's working fine. You know what? Come to the realization of where we're at in the world now. Septic systems, as towns and municipalities grow, need to be replaced by a more, should we say, water-friendly system. And whether that's a single point of collection, or there's numerous ways to do that. But still, for me personally, I'm supportive of the ability for reuse, especially in the community that we live in, that allows for outdoor use of secondary water, use your culinary water, indoor use. That, to me, is a no-brainer. Peter, you had a question or comment?
You were speaking, you spoke, you were going in the direction I was kind of going to go in, but I'll speak if it's okay with you. I don't have any problem with Mr. Sand's system. The problem I have is a town sewer system, and I caution everyone here in the whole town that you will, if the town puts a sewer system in, that you will be required to hook up at your expense. And it will be very costly for some homeowners in this town. Main Street, I know several homes that have no access to get a pipe around because they're on a pad. They can't get under the pad to get to Main Street. They'll have to dig up garages, driveways to bring a line around. It will be very costly. But Mr. Sand's system is a system that's been around for a long time, and it's not an issue. So I caution everyone in town. I mean, if you want to come up with thousands of dollars to tie into a sewer system, so we can reuse water, like Alan said, that's a decision the whole town has to make for themselves. I personally saw my mother and my father go through that. Saw my mom, after my dad died, saw my mom have to pay 10 grand to hook up to a sewer line that the town put through. I've been on sewer, septic my entire life, personally owning homes. If it's maintained properly, it's not an issue. A septic drains back down, like Mr. Sand's system, drains back down into the aquifer. We don't get to reuse the water for David, for his farm. And I think that would be a great idea if the water was clean enough, so it could be put back into their pipe, and they could grow melons with it. Would be wonderful. But I just caution everyone, you know, if you've got a lot of money left over, you know, a lot of money to spend, you know, agree to the sewer, and we go that route and everybody pays. But there's a lot of people in town that cannot afford to hook up. I mean, I watched my mom struggle after my dad died for that $10,000. So I just caution everyone. I think Mr. Sand's program, or you know, he's had a lot of thought. He's made a lot of concessions. I was on the planning commission when he approached us. The hilltop, I think Joe asked the hilltop. I asked Mr. Sand. We had no power to limit the heights of the buildings. We said it would be a good idea to do exactly what he said, and he's more than graciously complied. He's done everything he possibly can to please this community, and I think he should be. I think they. What am I trying to say? I think we should reciprocate. We should reciprocate and be kind to him. He's trying to do what's best. He's trying to do a beautiful development. He's taken off 20 homes off of his original plan. Little bigger lots. I think it's, you know, it's going to be nice for that area.
I agree with you. I was just wondering though about that maintaining. I mean,
I don't think the maintaining is an issue.
you think we can just hire somebody to do
I don't.
that?
Yeah. I don't.
Okay, what I'd like to do is,
I don't think that the state would have approved a mechanism if it wasn't maintainable. That it wasn't maintainable by communities.
well, let me put us back on track here, because we're dealing with the final plat here. We're not dealing with a sewer system that's on that final plat. That the approval within the annexation, or within the development agreement, says that he's allowed to use on-site wastewater facilities that are approved by the state. And as it goes through that process of construction, that's when that will be dealt with on the exact type of system that will be, and the configuration of it and how it interacts.
Right, when we pull the permit, why we'll have to present that, and you'll have a chance to review it at that time.
So I'm looking to go into a public hearing for the Phase 2 preliminary plat. Do I have a motion?
I move that we move into a public hearing for the preliminary plat of phase 2.
I'll second that. It's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Alan Roberts to go into a public hearing for Phase 2 Silver Point Estates preliminary plat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there's comments on that. I invite the public to come up, state your name. Rick, if you want to take your seat and specific questions, I would like to address them as they're asked at the time so we can resolve a concern that anyone has.
I'm Peter Orajana. Rick, when you came to the planning commission and you were doing the mitigation of the well, maybe that's not the right word. The uranium, all the cleanup. Thank you. When you came to us, Alan was on the planning commission, and we discussed cleaning up a whole project at that time. Are you, from what I hear, are you saying you're going to clean up 22 acres, 22 parcels, and then phase 1 of your smaller, phase 1, and then phase 2, you're going to clean up, and then phase 3 and phase 4?
Yeah, actually, the cleanup that we're going to do will clean up phases 1 and 2.
At the same time.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense.
So that's your original phase 1, the 45 the 45
They're
lots.
so closely tied together, you can't do one and then do the
Because
other.
part of that cleanup is going to be put on a parcel of land, a little southwest of the,
Yeah,
of the,
over in there.
the cemetery, the Protestant cemetery. So you'll do that, and then when you, but that won't be completed. That parcel won't be closed until the other two phases are done.
99% of the cleanup is in
Is-
phases 1 and 2.
Is over on there, okay.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do basically half, well, it's probably gonna be a lot more than half,
Yeah, we'll
because
have
it's over in the
90% of
for
it
phase 1 area.
will be completed and capped and taken care of, inspected by the state.
Well, I understand all that, I saw all the results, I read all that.
So, yeah, that'll all be done at once for phases 1 and 2. And like I say, 95% of the cleanup is on phases 1.
Phase 1 and 2. So there's very little on phase 3 and 4. And if there is, you're still gonna use that same piece of land,
That's right, we just extended out.
because I know you plan on
Right,
putting a membrane down and putting the material on top and fencing it all in. And,
that's right.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Name's Steve Lewis, representing Leeds Fire Department on this phase 2. I just want to continue to emphasize that some of the road grades on phase 2 don't meet the current fire code standard, which is 10%. I've talked to him a little bit, and I think we can work a few things out, but I still don't want that to get swept under the table. And that the roads on that hill do not meet the 10% grades. The best I can see from what I've seen of the designs on the roads in the grades. And then I want to continue to maintain access on that second egress, which I don't think is any issue or problem at all, but I'm still looking at a potential secondary egress one day that comes down off of that hill, ties into Cemetery Road.
It's that road right there.
Yeah, and so that's
Comes
still
down
there.
like that.
I again don't want that to get swept away too, because you're continuing to build a community on the west side of the interstate with only one way to get in and out. And we're continuing to expand it, and we're continuing to grow it. And over time, it's going to continue to be a problem if we don't make some way to get secondary egress out of there.
That trigger point, Steve, was originally on phase 2, which now would be phase 3 because he split phase 1. It's still the same number of rooftops, it's just the way that the applicant has.
And I understand and I appreciate that. I just, again, don't want it to get swept away. I want to make sure it stays there. In my opinion, there's a lot, if that becomes Leeds' long-term plan on secondary egress, it's my opinion that the whole financial burden of that shouldn't be actually placed on Mr. Stan, because he's not going to be the only person that benefits from that egress. I think that perhaps there should be other plans explored to find ways to finance that. But we're down the road too far on that. I'm not spend time going there. But again, the only concern now is that they're looking at a preliminary approval on phase 2. And I'm just concerned about the grade and slope on those ones.
Steve, the road that goes along the ridge there, are any of the grades on that one more than the 10% you talked about?
The one that I can recall, it's been a little while, because it's just, like I said, it's been, Mr. Stan's been real patient, it's been going on for a long time. But the biggest concern is coming off the hill. Yeah, coming off the hill, not there, but their next road, it's on phase 2 right there. I think that one was up to close to 14%, as I recall from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong. And on the other end, I don't think it was too far off. It was only like 11 or something. It was 10 and a half. I mean, it was like close. But the one on the other end, they're going to have, I don't think you can cut and fill and follow your hillside ordinances to mitigate the 14%. So there's gonna have to be something done, but there is a problem from what I see.
While we have engineers in the room talking about roads and road grades, what can be done to mitigate that concern?
We've had some conversation with Chief, my name is Kate Burnhurst with Alpha Engineering. We did the engineering for Rick Settlement's portion. Part of the concern with the steepness of the road would be location of the houses, location of the driveways, and the actual ability to, per se, stop a fire truck on the hill and actually be able to fight a fire. I thought in previous conversations we discussed that there was ways around the issue, and more or less be left upon the homeowner to actually coordinate that with the fire department and give them areas of egress where they can park a truck in the driveway, or there's ways to work around that. As far as the slopes, off the top of my head, they do require to have a maximum slope or what can be approved by the local government fire chief. So Chief Lewis could approve a steeper grade. We worked that way. So I thought we'd worked through most of that, but I
just don't want it to get lost, and I've never seen any language to guarantee anything. I've never seen pictures, I've never seen anything to ensure that we're okay. We've had words, but I haven't seen anything. So,
I would
I don't want to
suggest
get
that
lost.
as a condition of approval, that issue get resolved and
Generally, in a preliminary plat, there's not extensive engineering that is done. But in your final plat, those things need to be finalized. Rick?
The biggest problem we have is the second egress leaving our property and going down to the freeway interchange. At one time, that road was over here, and it was about 18 or 19%, and so we redesigned it and moved it over to there so that it would only be 15%. And for that road to work, why, that's because of the steepness and the amount of elevation that it's losing, it's impossible to do anything with that. It's if we're going to have that egress, that's going to have to be there. And then as far as that's concerned, why, it's just a short portion of it. This house will be fronting on that street, and a fire truck can park there. And then this right up here is fairly flat and that can take care of that area. So this right in here is just a small area. And there again, because of the steepness of the drop off right there, why it can't be taken care of. But there are other areas where fire trucks could go and not be on a 10 to 15% grade. But this one over here, we've done everything we can to design it so that it would be, you know, the, what would you call it, the best grade.
To give maybe a little example, Bob, I don't know if you'll know offhand, Russ, you might. I know that Rick would. Four-Master and the road going up to the old airport are two very steeply graded roads that would be similar to what Rick's talking about on that secondary egress. You know?
I don't know off the top of my head what they are. I wish I knew that long time.
Yeah, so it just gives an indication of.
I know the road to the old airport is steeper than 10%. I mean, we have in St. George, we got 715%.
You have what?
15% slope on a couple of roads. I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, but we do have that in some cases.
Yeah, and as we look at that area and the potential future, it's not ideal, but for a second egress coming off from those properties, realistically, because of the topography, it may be the only place that's available in that area. And so, you know, the town has to look at those conditions and mitigate the best they can on issues and ask yourself, what weighs the heaviest? A second egress to allow more safety for properties that exist there? Or do we stay so rigid on a percent grade that would not allow that? And at this point, you know, that does need to be answered, but that question does need to be answered at some point.
I'm not trying to infer that we haven't worked on it, we have some pretty good ideas. I just don't want the concept to get lost.
I agree.
Out of curiosity, has the right-of-way been secured to put that second egress all the way down through to?
Answer that, Rick.
That water tank is on our property,
Okay.
and this individual down here was the one that put the water tank up there improperly. And I worked out an agreement with him that if we deed that half acre to them for their water tank, that they will grant us an easement. And we have an easement drawn up and an agreement signed by the landowner there. We're waiting for them to annex into the town to complete it all, but when they annex, naturally that egress will be a part of their annexation agreement. So I believe we've taken care of that. And of course, we won't be permitted to build the second phase until that has been taken care of, and that would be addressed at the hearing for the final plat for that second phase.
No, phase two.
Phase two.
Yeah.
Rick, is the landowner you're just referring to the 4 acres that was a tree farm? That's right about there.
No, they own all of this land here.
The tree farm's further east than
The
the
road
road.
farms over there more.
It's to the east.
Okay, we still have a public hearing open. Is there any further comments from the public on this preliminary plat for phase one, or phase two, I'm sorry?
I have a question about we haven't really discussed this well enough, this wonderful sewer system they're talking about. I want to know, is there some write-up, some description in a write-up that these fellows have that we might get a copy of that we could, for instance, is there any chemical injection occasionally needed into this, and if so, what? You know, and things like that. And if you're going to use a membrane, how do you get to a membrane that's well underground? And what sort of chemicals are involved? And I kind of wonder when Rick says they've been doing this for 50 or 60 years on the East Coast, that can't be this system. It's got to be an ancient system. I mean, it's got to be one that's, it can't be that wonderful, or we would have heard about it on the West Coast at some point.
I don't have the answer to your question on that, Jerry.
Can we get some
There
information on it?
is a preliminary design report that they have done by Aqua Engineering. I assume that might be available. I would guess that would be available.
I think we deserve to see something like that in writing, print.
Rick?
Yeah, the answer to the question is yes, we can come up with all of that information, but I don't think it's germane to the subject at hand.
It's not germane to this preliminary plat.
But I'd be more than happy to get a full report on this system and to bring it to the council and go over it with them. And there again, you brought up the fact that we won't be allowed to install anything without us presenting it to you and getting a permit to do it. And you have the right to either accept it or reject it. And if it's something that's going to be objective to the neighborhood or to anybody that lives in the town, why you wouldn't accept it. But I can't see that it has anything to do with whether we approve this.
Are there any further
plan.
comments on this preliminary plat? Betty?
Okay, is there just like a name or something to be Googled? What do you call it?
What part of, is there anything left on this preliminary plat didn't you understand on that? Okay, this is what we're dealing with.
Can't you answer that? I mean, is it
We're not-
Mr. Sack, can you tell us what the process is or the name or something?
Okay, I'm looking to close this public hearing.
Move that we close the public hearing.
Second, it's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Alan Roberts to close the public hearing on the preliminary plat for Phase 2, Silver Point Estates. All those in favor? Aye.
I have a question. In phase 2, the open space that you have there, is that really steep? Is it something that would be walked on or used, or is it just a visual open space?
Well, that's where the L is. And when you drive on the freeway and you see the L, that's where the L is. And I would say, what is that, about a 2-to-1 slope? It's fairly steep, yes. It's fairly steep.
Yeah, you've not seen it. It's quite small.
I don't drive that way.
And then this area right here is an open space with a trail connecting the lower area with the upper area, and trails all along here. And that is, that's fairly walkable, yes.
Okay.
But I would say this right here, you know, somebody else could probably, how about you, Joe? Have you ever tried to walk that area?
I have no desire to walk that area.
It's pretty steep, you know, it's at least 3 to 1.
The portion of the trail, it looks like it goes through two people's lots.
Yeah, in the CC&Rs,
That will,
that is an easement that's dedicated to the homeowners association and will be governed and maintained by the homeowners association. And it's an existing road. As you are down here and you look up there, that's the existing road that goes along that face, so that you can hike up there like that.
Pretty high.
yes. Thank you.
Great place to watch the fires.
Okay, do we have any, I'm ready to move on to an action item on number 3. Do we have any further discussion on the council for Phase 1, final plat, Silver Point Estates? I will throw in, and I'm just going to give you the numbers, but there are 3 conditions that I would like to see put on this. And Rick, you had mentioned those. We need to make sure that the RMPP through the BLM is solidified with the town adjacent to the Catholic cemetery and those 2 roadways that come across there. That would be one condition. The other condition is that it's properly drawn on your plat, the UDOT right-of-way, and how it intersects with your property coming up Silver Reef Road. And the other, dealing with any type of issues that are historical significance and or graves that are encountered through any excavation.
And fourth, the mining tailings.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, we can attach that one to there, but I believe that's in the agreement. We can attach it to this as a condition. But still back on this, any graves, any historic significance that is discovered be mitigated through the state agencies that regulate that before any further work is done in that specific area where it may be discovered. And for, as Angie said, that we receive the compliance letter from the state according to the mitigation of the remediation of any of the cleanup from the Department of Environmental Quality before any permits, building permits, would be allowed on that phase.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's reasonable.
That's my recommendation.
I agree.
If there's something else out there that you're thinking,
I have no other discussion. Are we ready for a motion then?
I am. What about you, Angie?
Then I move that we approve Silver Point Estates proposed final plat, phase 1, with those 4 conditions.
I'll second that motion. It's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Alan Roberts, to approve Silver Point Estates final plat, phase 1, including the 4 conditions as named. Amy? Now, we have this document from Sunrise Engineering, and those 4 conditions, we can refer
Only
to
3, I
those.
don't think the 4th is in there.
Yeah, we're gonna add that one. We'll add it to this condition. I'm quite confident that it lives in the agreement already, but I'd like to see it specifically tied to this final plat. So, it's clear that those 4 conditions exist with this motion. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Now we're looking at a preliminary plat, which would be phase 2 for Silver Point Estates. As Russ had mentioned in his staff report, from an engineering standpoint, our engineers are quite comfortable with what's there. I would also remind this body that there's a difference between a preliminary plat and a final plat. And sometimes we get or have a desire, it's just human nature, that we try to answer every single engineering issue in a preliminary plat, which is not what preliminary plats are.
Help me understand the purpose of the preliminary plat. Is it to say, yes, this is our concept, these are the lot sizes, this is the general idea we're going to go with, we're looking for preliminary approval to take to the next level? Is that basically what we're
Bob,
talking
would
about?
you respond to that question?
Yes, I think that's generally, though, to prove that it's feasible. You know, you show contours that identify any unique problems related to slope and, you know, or compliance with the ordinance, but it is to lay out in enough detail, then it goes to the next step where they, you know, then put together construction drawings and final plan.
And that's something that initially we had hammered out when this went all the way through to a final plat originally, back in 2008, I believe is when it happened. Probably late in 2008. And that's one of the things the applicant has done is we had concerns, as Peter had mentioned, we had concerns with, you know, this cliff area and, you know, and in their preliminary, they pulled those back and said, well, we won't put any homes allowed to come out into those areas. You know, they have to stay back away. So that's kind of where preliminaries are, is and handle some issues that are inherent with the properties themselves that we looked at. Personally, I'm very comfortable with this. To come through and not record a final plat and come through and amend, it's the first time that I'm aware of that this town has encountered that. So it was a little bit different as far as the process when the applicant came in and wanted to split that up.
I have no further comment, concern.
This is January report for any items on here, on Sunrise Engineering. for January. And that we would want to make as conditions.
Russ,
You know, I think the major ones on there are the notes that we're talking about, the potential geologic, geotechnical hazards and flood hazards. And they have subsequently done 2 more geotechnical reports and in addition to those reports to address those issues. They've done a ton of other studies, you know, preliminary, I think there's a preliminary drainage report. They've done a whole bunch of those studies. I personally have not seen the title report. I think that he has. I don't know that for sure. But all these other things to me are very minor and can be addressed as you move into that final plat.
we do have the title report from the original application that came through a few years ago. And nothing, to my knowledge, has changed physically on that property since that point.
I think that just coming to an agreement or something agreeable with the town on the road grades is a good idea to have in there. I wasn't the one who actually reviewed the preliminary construction drawings a while back. That was before somebody else was doing that. So I didn't really know about those 10% road grades. But I think that just having a condition in there that we come to an agreement would be a good condition.
Yeah. I have no problem with the steeper road, just so long as it, like I say, it's safe for a fire truck, they park there, they can handle putting out a fire. Would there be any other reason that a steeper road than 10% would be of concern to the town?
Generally, it's,
I was just gonna say, you know, in some areas where, you know, further north, colder areas, it's, if you get snow and ice on the road, sometimes it's the steeper the road, the more difficult it is to maintain, things like that. In this area, it's not as big of an issue. There are roads all around this area that are, you know, that do approach that 15%. They're not ideal, but in some instances, it's tough to come up with another solution.
Sure. I would say just so long as the applicant continues to communicate with the fire chief and work toward a equitable resolution for that issue.
so I think that that's something that's gonna be looked at extremely close when the applicant comes in for a final plat approval. Is at that time, a better understanding of exactly what those grades would be. Definitely be part of the discussion on final.
I'm thinking about the secondary access there, not just the grade, but is that really just kind of like a cliff that, and then the road is kind of stuck in there? This is a sandstone area, I would think, and would be, well, I'm just thinking about Highway 14, it's been closed, opened and then reclosed again with collapses. With people driving down particularly a really steep road, is there enough safety so somebody won't just drive off the road?
There are design requirements. I mean, that's a great point. To design that road, it's going to have to meet the current design guidelines and
I was just wondering if there
AASHTO
even
requirements
space
and
to
things
deal
like
with.
that. You know, I don't. Those are engineering issues that are going to have to be incorporated into that design to make sure that they meet the current requirements.
That's not necessarily an issue that's pertinent to approval of the preliminary plat.
No, but a condition, if we will put conditions on preliminaries, then they need to be remembered, they will be remembered to be addressed when a final comes.
I think that we could attach that as a note or something on a preliminary, so it's there in black and white, that needs to make sure that it's revisited on a final plat, no matter who's sitting on the council dealing with that, whenever that time is. And we could just make it a blanket statement of grades and roadway engineering, needs to be.
The design engineer on that, which it sounds like it was gonna be Alpha working, for these guys, they'll have to just, it's their responsibility to make sure that they're meeting all of those, road design, rules and guidelines. So,
And of course, whatever they present to us, our town engineers are going to review those and make recommendations one way or the other. But if you want to make a specific note on motion, then
Yeah,
do so.
I would like to have a condition included that would be addressed, that would be remembered to be addressed on the plan. Because I think that the same issue at some point will come up again in reference to, what do we call it now? Was a Roy or a gal.
Silver Eagle Estates.
Silver Eagle.
Yeah.
With their secondary access.
Well, if we're ready for a motion, I move that we approve the preliminary plat of phase 2 with the condition that design standards on the secondary access road are followed, or how do we word that?
The grade and
specifications and federal and state regulations. I don't know.
Oh, okay, then we'll revise that. I move that we approve the preliminary plat of phase 2 of Silver Point Estates with the condition that design standards, federal, state, all local, state and federal design standards are met for the secondary access
road grade.
and road grade.
And the road grade is, use on the road grade was just to make sure that you end up with a agreeable solution with the fire chief and the council.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I second.
It's been moved by Joe Allen, seconded by Angie Rohr, to approve the preliminary plat, phase 2 for Silver Point Estates with a condition to follow design standards, that the design standards are met for the secondary access and for the road grades. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Their sheet, it's down in black and white.
Okay, we're moving on to a discussion item, and we would ask the chief to come up.
Rick, not a little jig or a dance or a Yahoo?
As part of our efforts to clean up the addressing on the town, we discovered that that the, I don't know what you want to call it, Leeds Market Complex or whatever it's called, that it really had no sense to it. We've had emergency medical most of the time back there, and they're sitting there, you know, flipping their light off and on, so we know which trailer it is. Things just weren't good. So basically I had the state propose a plan, and that's the plan that you see there is what they proposed. Mr. Fuller checked off on that when I went through this process. But today when I contacted him, because I wanted to make sure that he was still okay with this, he referred me to his new manager of the complex. Her name's Nan Anderson. So I went over it with her, and she had things she was not happy with on that plan. So what I did is kind of a rough PDF modification there. And so what you have in front of you now is what she recommends for the complex. Basically, she didn't like all the letters. She didn't want any letters. She wanted those all removed. So basically, I can try to give you an example, like 221 North. From now on, if you look at your sheet, it would just start, then go 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it ends at 10 there on that complex. So an address would be just 221 North Main Street, and then whatever building it's in. The park, same thing. A has become 1, it goes down, and then at N it starts again at, what is that? Let's see. Starts again at 8, I think it is, and goes across. So it just changed the numbers. But basically, at this point, they're happy with what you have there. The fire department's happy because each area has a specific number, so that we could locate anything that was there, any RV park, RV trailer, or any rental unit or storage unit. We can find it now with this.
So that's S1 through 6, not 51 through 56.
Right. Originally, the 2 was to represent, like on 221 North, the 2 was to represent the second story, which to me was backwards because stories usually go first floor, second floor. And they numbered it the other way around, the first floor, and then went down to 2. But she didn't like that. She just wanted it to be an S for storage units, and we're fine with that. We know that the bottom is storage units, and the top is rental space or space that people rent out to do business. So I guess what we're saying is at this point, they're not here to speak for themselves, but I did share this with them today, and this is what they like. Fire department has no problems with it. It works fine. And so we're just looking to, any questions you want to answer, and then moving on to an agenda item that we can take action in the future.
The empty building to the north, does it have a number?
You know, it's not owned by the Fullers. It's a really good question. It's on a different lot. It's not a home, it's not a residence right now, it's a fire hazard. But,
I just noticed the one, that home.
I know it doesn't have a residence. The way I see it is it's just right now, it's just a big outbuilding on somebody's lot.
Okay.
So you're not really used to numbering addressing outbuildings on lots. But from that aerial picture, it's a good question. It's bigger than the house, so.
Yeah, when I first looked at this, Steve, in a discussion that I'd had with Fran a while back dealing with this, I'm not sure the best way to deal with commercial complexes that are the same property. And when I say that, this property would unlikely, I'm not gonna say never because that's a long time, but unlikely would this property ever be able to be subdivided to where any of those buildings would exist on their own. It exists as a complex, And first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, we establish what an address is for the main part of the complex, and then require the complex owner to have good signage that determines whatever lives inside there, as far as like these numbers you're talking, you know, 1, 2, 3. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. But from a standpoint of when you get a call and as a first responder, yeah, you don't know whether it's sitting in the RV park back behind, or if it's sitting in one of the storage unit rentals.
And this is obviously cleanup. Yeah. I think life would be a little more controllable if somebody come in with a new complex. We can go, hey, this is the way it's going to be. This is cleanup. This is trying to fix something that was built 35 years ago, and now just trying to deal with it.
I'm good with what this latest, if that's the way that the manager of the complex wants to know them, I say, okay, fine, because it doesn't distract from being able to determine.
If it's pretty good standard, I mean, each building in proportion to the direction on the street has a number that's progressive. In other words, it's pretty conforming. From our perspective on public safety, it is going to make it better for us to be able to, you know, find somebody in the middle of the night instead of knocking on doors trying to find out who's wanting something. I think law enforcement will like it too, because a lot of, in the past, they have to go in there before we do, and it's really been hard for them, and I feel for them because they're the guy with the gun that's got to deal with stuff, and we've had to deal with that kind of stuff, and I feel like it's important for them too to know where they're going before they get there and get in, instead of trying to figure it out with all the other problems they have.
So 257 is where the computer store went in briefly.
Yes, yes, that'd be correct.
259, is that small kind of room?
Yes.
That, okay.
That's now going to become, they're remodeling it right now to become a new office for the facility.
Oh.
The reason we have this discussion is when we made address changes, there was an exhibit that went along with that resolution dealing with changing some addresses. So not only do we have these in this commercial complex, one other that I will bring up, and there's a couple others, but we will have to make an amendment to that exhibit. And the one I'd like to bring up, we changed an address on Don Goddard's, on his specific house, and also on a rental house that he has. His specific house is in the county. We had no jurisdiction to change that address, but we did put that on that exhibit. So, you know, that's one thing that we need to...
Yeah, I'm not sure that's quite... The problem was Mr. Goddard had his personal residence as 1001. He also had the rental unit as 1001. So if you look at the exhibit, there is a 1001, but I'm not sure that it was Goddard's residence. It was the...
Well, it's specifically named...
And that's where the mistake is.
Yes. It's
Now, I
specifically
think
named.
that the listing was probably correct, but the name was wrong. But anyway, yeah, you're correct. He's in the county. They can't do that.
So at some point, we will have to do an amendment to the exhibit on that. That went with that.
In my opinion, somewhere, I think you need to have a discussion on how you're going to handle addressing and addressing changes. I mean, you can't spend the next 10 years going back to an original exhibit. Somehow you're going to have to create, this is how we do it, this is who has authority to do it, and this is how it happens. Maybe Heath has to be involved, but I cannot comprehend Mayor MacArthur or many of those people dealing, and I know they don't have staff and planning, but I don't think they ever think about what the address means in St. George City. So my point is, and I understand you have to deal with laws, all of it, but I think the concept of having to go through formal public hearings and all that to just change and modify the addresses in your city, to me, it just sounds a little extreme. Here's somebody that might know better, a lot better than me, but I can't imagine the town council approving address changes in these cities. I just can't.
Well, they have, I mean,
If it's a big enough issue, like when we swept through this whole big revolutionary change, I mean, yeah, that's a big deal, but on a day-to-day managing basis,
we have a staff person assigned Lonnie Bowler who just assigns addresses, so it usually it's one person.
so I think once we get, this big stuff out of the way, you'll be able to find a new process that'll work and be legal and fine, and not have to fight the little stuff and deal with the sewage issues.
Do we not determine any new addresses based off from an actual location according to our grid? Does the state not say, is the state not the one that come out and says, okay, this is the number that we should attach to that because of
Well,
where
what
the
happens,
physical location is?
what happens is the state, we make suggested changes, and then the state runs it through this uniform addressing system. In other words, saying this is comply with all these addressing standards. And then they kick out what doesn't comply. What I learned is that they don't really have the ultimate authority to say what it is. There's a recommendations that you follow, and the municipality has the authority to address their town, their community. So I consider them their recommendations, and they're trying very hard to keep us in compliance with a standard. And for the most part, we're really good at keeping to that standard, and we're really bad at it. And we have both. All the exceptions that we gave to all of Bonanza, all of that, totally makes us out of standard. But that's what the town decided, so that's what it is. That shows that the town ultimately decides what it's going to be, whether it fits the standard or not. I don't know if I'm helping you or not, but so ultimately it is the town's addressing, and you have the authority and power to do it. The states are recommending, trying to keep us in line with the standards that are set, which, I mean, that's a whole profession, so it's way over me. So we have good compliance in most of our areas, and we have some areas where we don't have. But we've accepted that, and we're moving forward, so.
Looking back on my Leeds emails, I'm showing August 11th of last year, you giving us final addressing, which I believe I worked with you on. And I thought that we voted that it was going to take place on January 1.
It did.
It did.
It did. But I don't see it's changed. I mean, maybe there's been one or two that have
Well, I don't know any way to get your residents to conform to what their addresses are.
Where it changes is recording in entities like the county. That's
And there
where
it
the
has
changes
changed.
have taken place.
And I've spent a lot of time, and I continue to spend quite a bit of time going on Google Mapping and saying, no, wrong, 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 wrong. And 3 months later, they send back and go, we'll agree, we'll disagree, we agree. So I've learned that it's a time involved deal. It just takes some time. I know my neighbor I changed the address on the fire station to the correct one, and my neighbor next door did, and the next door neighbor to him did not. So I think it's just a time. Will it create some confusion? Yeah, for a little while, until people understand that's the way it is. But I think it's just a time thing. In time it will change and conform.
So will the Fullers, if we agree to this, the Fullers will agree to, and they'll what, make these postings?
Well, go ahead. We have a real established format on how we handle it.
Yeah. Don Forrest agreed, his managers agreed to this. And so these numbers will be submitted for those physical positions of businesses and or residents that we change, submitted to the county, they make those changes.
You'll have to decide probably whether Amy sends them. I would tell her, hey, You can send them to Mr. Fuller, let him take care of his complex. Or you can go to each individual business, but I don't think I want that headache on me.
No, the municipality needs to be the one to call the county and or send the documentation that says this is the established address for
Yeah.
this area.
Fran created a real nice form that she sent to everybody that had changed. I have a copy of that form for Cal. And I think she sent that to the county, she sent it to the landowner, and it was very official. I know I've photocopied, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 copies of it and told a person that pays our bills, hey, you just put a copy of that in every bill you send for the next 4 months till they get it, you know, so. It works.
Part of that letter from the municipality is that they can send to any entity that may question, well, now wait a minute, this is what you had down for an address. Here's an official statement from the municipality that says my address has changed to this number.
And we've just mailed that to every vendor, every person we do business with, and it's just kind of fixing itself because of that. So I guess the next step is we'll put it on a deal where you can formally take an action.
Yep,
Great.
sounds good. Thanks, Steve. Item number 5. Some updates by staff. We had a little bit of discussion in our work meeting last week, talking a little about impact fees on the roadways. We have some funds that are getting close to expiring on, not so much on road projects, more specifically on public safety. But we really need to decide, and unfortunately, the 2 individuals that are assigned to the roads, our 2 council members, are not here. Kind of one thing I wanted to touch on this update dealing with roads. We had an individual in the community that was involved in a situation with some landscaping that is encroached out in the roadway that caused quite a bit of damage to a vehicle. A situation like that, depending on how the town handles it, has a potential for legal repercussions. The road that we're referring to is Silver Reef Road.
Drive.
Silver Reef Drive, yeah, thank you, Angie. And I've had a little bit of discussion with council members one-on-one, Angie and Frank, and Joe. I don't know the best course of action to take. First thing, it will be difficult to tell a property owner, look, what you have out there is actually in the road, public right-of-way. It needs to be removed, and or the town will remove it. If the town does not take any steps to mitigate the issues of whatever it may be in a right-of-way that has the potential to cause a hazard to somebody or to somebody's personal belongings, the town could stand in a legal situation to have to deal with that. My first desire has been, every newsletter that's gone out over the past year has specifically asked individuals to look at encroachments that they have, whether it's on public right-of-ways, whether it's on other personal properties, and to remedy them. I don't know how you get people to be responsible, and if it's not your property, get it off of there. It's that simple. But I do know that people will question as to where that property line exists. And so when it comes to right-of-ways, public right-of-ways, I am very supportive of establishing where those public right-of-ways are on an actual survey on the ground, and then if property owners have a dispute with that, they could have their own survey company perform a survey. I'll give you an example where the bus turns around up on Oak Grove Drive. We did have a survey done about 1.5 years ago. What sticks in my head on that. There were some property owners that really questioned the validity of that survey. They had their own survey done, and it was a valid survey. They were surprised at how far some of their rock walls and things had encroached on that public right-of-way. But of course, they petitioned the town, hey, would the town be in favor of selling that portion? We decided as a group at that time that we weren't going to expand really out beyond from where the bus was already utilizing that turnaround. But the town is not going to be selling portions of property like that because it will cause extremely major issues when you start jogging a right-of-way, because now you're going to tell the next property owner, well, in order to be consistent on this, you have to buy this. No, the right-of-way is already established. And I really don't know what the answer is to get people to remedy that. I do know that if the right situation happens, the town could find itself with a potential lawsuit that causes an issue in a public right-of-way, especially if the town knows about it and fails to do something about it.
This particular curve has major boulders. We're not talking about the low rocks that she hit, but I mean really major boulders that I would think would be encroached by they would be within the right of way. It's a difficult curve, and the road is very narrow there.
What are we talking about specifically?
The Schwartz property, curve there, Frank, Markovich.
That Silver Reef Drive is a 40-foot dedicated roadway easement that goes up through there. And the exact location of that is probably not where you see the edge of what appears to be the right-of-way. It's one of those deals where those rocks exist and they should not, but without establishing exactly where that line is, you're going to upset whoever put those rocks there.
Sure.
Unless you can show this is where the property line is. Your rocks are out in the roadway. They need to be moved.
You know the big boulders I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They were not placed.
Just by the last glacier.
No.
So they're there naturally, you're saying, they weren't added as part of the landscape?
There are some very large ones. The ones that were hit by the driver were small rocks.
Or were they placed there as a
And they were
landscape?
placed.
Yeah, that's a problem. Because I think the town would be potentially liable.
And
It's in the right of way.
And one reason they placed them there was because people were parking and trying to hit a trailhead walking through their property.
It's in the right
But
of way.
it's about 3 feet off of the pavement.
See, when an area that is established like that out in the county, when it's annexed in, you annex in whatever those roadways are, whatever the right-of-ways are. That doesn't mean that you have to live with what's happened on any encroachments that are there. But a 40-foot right-of-way with, the town allows on-street parking, and I'm quite confident that's the reason that a number of those rocks are placed there, is to restrain people from parking in front of residents. I know that will be a can of worms that gets opened up, but I know it'll be a can of worms in a court of law, because we'll lose. We'll lose if we know about it and just arbitrarily do not try to mitigate the issue that's there.
They're not necessarily in the roadway, they're in the deeded right-of-way.
They're in the dedicated right of way. I assume, I make an assumption because there's been no survey done there, but more than likely. Because they sit pretty close to the asphalt. And the asphalt paving is maybe 20 feet.
Where could you hire Sunrise, their survey crews come up there and do a little orange stripe for them to kind of identify it, and then property owners have a right, if they want to challenge it or appeal it, like say, they can hire their own and.
We can. That's where, that's what I'm referring to. That within itself, Bob, will open a can of worms.
Like you said, if somebody runs into it, somebody's injured, they'll name the city as a defendant in a lawsuit. It'll be tough if you know there's an obstruction in the right of way, that shouldn't be there. You know, it wasn't too long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the county had Dameron Valley developers, those space numbers, had to go in and cut down some trees that were in the right of way because of that same issue. So, you know, they were nice to leave and pretty or aesthetic, but you know, it was deemed by their public safety people and their, you know, county surveyors as a, you know, encroachment into that right of way.
Who is responsible for maintaining what I'll call no man's land between, like, use my home as an example, my property corner and the asphalt? Is that the right of way? Is that the city responsibility?
That right of way is the responsibility of the municipality or the entity that owns that dedicated right of way. Yeah.
So does your property line go out from the street?
My property corners are roughly 10 feet off the asphalt. I'm sure it stays. Assuming it wasn't a 10-year-old kid that stuck in there. It's way back when.
That is one of the pictures of the area that we're referring to. These rocks that are there that were struck. What Angie's looking at.
I saw you driving by the other day, take pictures.
I was taking a video, yeah, I was on reconnaissance. You know, it's one of those deals where, and I wasn't solely up on Silver Reef. I can tell you on West Mulberry, in front of the CCC camps, there's issues there on encroachments, and
Is that what's Millbury there?
it is. I do not believe on singling any one individual, any one area out. I believe people should be treated and governed by the same rules and regulations, and they are. And people need to be held as accountable no matter where they're at. I think all of us as property owners understand, okay, this is my property. It's this big. That's it. You know, you keep your stuff on your side, I'll keep mine on mine. Whether it's a public right of way, whether it's a personal property. It's that cut and dry. But I don't know, for some reason, it's hard for people to come to that concept and say, hey, I need to not encroach or infringe on somebody else's property. And I feel that strongly when it comes to properties on burial plots inside of a cemetery. You know, it's the It's the same rationale. But where the incident took place was up on Silver Reef Drive, so. I just thought I'd throw that out for an update. There's gotta be something. And realistically, it starts with establishing where that right of way is. It has to, because if you don't establish where that's at, you have a very hard time taking any action, because then it just becomes an argument between a municipality and a property owner that has some rocks laying out there that says, well, no, my property goes out there. Until it's solidified on a survey. Just guessing as to where it's at. But it will open up a can of worms. Any further comments there on updates by staff? For some reason there was one other, but I can't. Thought I'd remember it.
Wait. You mentioned the public safety. Did you come up with any other uses of public safety money other than what you came up with?
No, I think we looked at state law. In fact, I have it here with me, but I think that references buildings.
Buildings and equipment.
Yeah, those are really the only things you can use it for. And I kind of threw out maybe lights, but no, you can do that. It's buildings and equipment.
Did I mention we had somebody contact us to buy the police car?
Yes.
It was a county constable. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna sell it yet. Joe still wants to see how fast it'll go. So. Okay, no further updates by staff. I'm looking for a motion.
So we could buy a snowplow?
Not under public safety.
Oh.
You could buy another police vehicle if you think you need one. You can't buy jails. I remember specifically when Bob read that.
No jails.
Yeah, you can't spend that money on jail cells and that type of stuff.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.